Alright. Let's do this. Akame Got Killed was made in 2014 by Studio White Fox, the same studio who made Good Stuff. It follows the story of our main character, Tatsumi, and already in the first sentence, this show fucked up. But we'll get to that. Tatsumi comes from a poor village, and along with his two best friends is on a mission to go get jobs with the military in order to bring money back home. Whoa, I know, right? It sounds like backstory and character development. Don't worry, don't be afraid, we're not going to get any of that. It doesn't come back till the very end. So Tatsumi and his buddies head out to the big city and get separated on the way there. Tatsumi finds the military recruitment center, or whatever it's called, and gets turned away only to have all of his possessions stolen a little while later by a pair of boobs. He ends up getting taken in by this rich girl who tells him that a group of assassins is after her and her family because they're rich. So he heads over to her place, and wouldn't you know it, the assassins attack that night. Only as it turns out, the girl was lying the whole time and the assassins weren't after her because she was rich, but because she crazy. Ooh, she crazy. Tatsumi finds out that the girl actually brought him back to her place in order to kill him, and that his friends that he got separated from were tortured to death by her. So Tatsumi understandably stops defending her against the assassins and turns around and kills her ass. At which point he sees the bodies of his friends and he goes to mourn them, and it's actually a really touching scene where he gets to have his final farewells to them, gets to say that he's sorry that he couldn't protect them, and gets to just cry and feel the emotion and the burden of everything that just fucking with you. See, that's what a good show would do. He gets kidnapped by that assassin group and joins their cause. They're called the Night Raid. He becomes a member of their stuff because fucking what's mourning? What's emotion? I don't know. Is that what humans do? I don't know. Okay, so I'm sure there's a bunch of you who are thinking, what? I really like this show. Akame Got Killed was really good. Why is he shitting on it? Why doesn't he like it? Why is he being so overly critical? I get it. I understand where you're coming from, and there actually is some pretty good stuff in here, so we're gonna hit that first. Then I'm gonna shit on it. All the fight scenes are very fluid. They draw you in. They keep you there centered in the moment in that fight scene. You want to watch it because it's pretty, because it draws you in. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are great shows that do that. I think that that's a good thing, but story has to follow with it. Next up in the good shit department is another production one, and it's sound. The opening song is really hyperactive, it's hyped up, it gets you ready for the fighting and the blood and the gore and all the stuff that you've been waiting for. It's pretty much the opening to a shonen. It's meant to do that. It's meant to draw you in and get you hyped up for action that's about to come. So I mean, it does its job, and it meshes really well with the colors and all the stuff that they use at the opening, although I will say that the opening visuals themselves leave a little bit to be desired. If you ask me, usually there's supposed to be like a theme with an opening, and I didn't really catch that here. It just kind of seemed more like, hey, this is badass, watch it. But it does its job. I mean, that's what it wants to be. It wants to be badass, it wants you to watch it, and it does its job for that. The outro, I don't even remember it. I just watched the entire series. Can't remember the outro. Might be good, might be bad, I don't remember. As far as any other music or background music goes, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I didn't even notice it until the very last fight. Most of it just kind of seemed like generic shonen background music that I've heard a lot before, but that last fight, there's one song in there, and that's pretty solid. As far as the voice acting goes, I'm gonna say the sub is pretty much on par. It's pretty much exactly what you want to hear for this kind of show. It's not too over the top, it's not too understated, it's pretty much just average, but the dub, I'm gonna give the edge to the dub. Now the reason for this isn't because the dub is so much better than the sub and everybody does this stellar, perfect, spectacular job. No, it's because you could tell the dub actors were really trying to give these characters personality. I feel like about 80% of the personality that these characters have comes solely from the American voices that I heard with them. Now we're going to talk about the bad. Okay, so like I said before, this show is very rule of cool. It's very much look at all the fights and the bright colors and the rock kind of soundtrack and the badass weapons and the boobs. It's very much kind of like this is a man show. Not quite Gurren Lagann status, but it definitely has the same feel of kind of wanting to be the man show. Now that's all good and well, I have no problem with that. If that's why you enjoy this, you like it because it kind of gives you that man feel, like, oh, look at the fights and look at the blood and look at the gore and stuff like that, that's fine. I totally get it. I don't think any lesser of you for liking the show, but I don't, and I'm gonna explain why. Okay, so when people first wanted me to watch this show and they were first putting reviews out for it and I was watching all these other people reviewing it, people were saying things like, this show's so awesome, no one has plot armor, anybody can die, anything can happen, it's so adult, it's so mature. But that's not true. Okay, now in order to explain why that's not true, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about each of the characters that matter. First up is our lead Tatsumi. You basically know everything about him, except eventually he gets a suit of metal armor, joins the night raid, and fights against the military, essentially what he was trying to join, led by a woman named Esdeath, who has ice powers. That's pretty much all the development he gets. Next up is Akame. Remember how at the beginning I was like, oh, they already fucked up in the first sentence. Yeah, Akame got killed. It isn't about Akame. What? All you really need to know about her is that she's not really the leader of the Night Raid. She has a backstory. She uses a katana. She also has a power, sort of, and she kills people seemingly better than anybody else. She doesn't really have a lot of personality to go with her backstory or to go with her powers. She's kind of just there and kind of quiet and kind of dead in the soul, but she has good character design and she kills real good. Next up is the Pompadour having guy named Bullet. He's basically kind of the first owner of Tatsumi's armor, and he's just there to kind of give Tatsumi a bro. Next up is Leon. She's basically a cat girl that wears a belt that gives her cat-like strength, I guess. And she's also the girl that stole Tatsumi's money at the very beginning. Then you have Lovick, or as I like to call him, Strings. He's got green hair, uses strings to fight, kind of pervy. That's about it. Then you have Mine, who's basically a tsundere and a loli. She's a half-breed human, even though she looks like a full-blooded human. She's got pink hair, wears a dress, has a big gun. She's kind of bitchy. Then you have the head honcho of the Night Raid, a girl who I'm going to call the Bionic Commando, because I can't remember her name. She's got a bionic arm. She doesn't really fight or anything. She kind of just sends them out on missions. She's got bionic arm. That's her character trait. Then you have Chelsea. She wears headphones and likes lollipops. Then you have Susanoo, or Susanoo. He's a human and a weapon. He's a human weapon. He's a human weapon. And lastly, you have Shiel, who just likes to scissor. Now, all of these characters make up the Night Raid, and their entire goal is to go after the Empire and take down the regime. But of course, that means the Empire has its own set of characters. Now, with the Empire, I'm not going to list all of the characters. I'm just going to list a couple of the ones that actually matter, because there's very few that actually matter. First up is Esdeath. She's basically the general of the guys that are going after the Night Raid. She kind of fights all the wars for the Empire. She's pretty much kind of the head honcho under the head honchos. All you really need to know about her is that she's really crazy and uses ice. That's it. Then you have two characters I'm going to go ahead and call Anti-Tatsumi and Anti-Akame. They're basically just bad versions of Tatsumi and Akame. There's more to their storylines, but I'm not going to spoil that. Just think of them that way. And then last but not least, you have the Emperor, who's basically a little kid, and then a guy named Honest, who's kind of just pulling his strings like a puppet in the background. Oh, and then there's a crazy Justice girl with a dog. She's there too. Whoo boy, this show. Now, as you know, the Night Raid's going after the Empire to try and take down the regime. Now, the problem with that is that not a lot of these characters have a strong enough backstory to explain why they're doing that. Mine wants the Empire to go down because she's a half-breed human who's always been treated like crap, and the Night Raid promised basically equality for all, so she joined them. Leon wants the Empire to go down because she used to live in the slums and was either beaten or molested. It's kind of alluded to that she may have been molested or something, but basically she knows what the slums are like and she wants that shit to stop. Akame, on the other hand, is kind of doing this for an entirely separate set of reasons, but we're not gonna get into that. Lovick joined up because he has a crush on the Bionic Commando. Yep. Now, as I said, a lot of people like the show because there's no plot armor and mature storytelling. But let me ask you a question. If you haven't seen this show, can you tell me two characters who aren't gonna die till the end? Yes, you can, can't you? Akame and Tatsumi. One, the show is named after, and the other one is the main character. They're gonna make it until the end. You already know this without me ever having to explain this to you. That is the definition of plot armor. Sure, a lot of other characters die in gruesome ways and stuff like that, but that doesn't matter if you know that there's two characters who aren't gonna die. Or else, you know, there wouldn't be a structured plot. It would pretty much just be random. And you know what? The plot armor, not really a problem for me. I don't mind it whatsoever. What I do mind is how they treat death in the show. See, the problem with this show is exactly why a lot of people like it. Almost anybody can die at any time, and usually that's not a bad thing. It keeps the viewer on their toes and it keeps them caring. But first, you have to care about the characters, and this show doesn't do that. See, each character has a reason for being where they are, but past that, they don't develop. And usually it's a very generic reason. Mine is a half-breed. Lubbock is in love. Leon was mistreated. Sure, these are all decent reasons to be a part of the night raid, but who are they past that? What dreams do they have past that? Outside of Lubbock wanting somebody to touch his dick. Outside of that, nobody really has any dreams or aspirations. Nobody changes over the course of the show. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Tatsumi changes a lot, or Akame changes. There might be an argument there for Akame, but Tatsumi, he doesn't change as a character. Now let me put that into some perspective, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, Tatsumi did change, Tatsumi did this, Tatsumi did that. Okay, let's look at another show that's not really well known for character development. Naruto. Naruto starts off the show as a delinquent child who's shunned by everyone and has dreams of being the Hokage. But over the series of the show, he begins to gain friends, and he stops acting out in order for people to pay attention to him. Instead, he starts saving his friends, caring about his friends, and relying on his friends. And throughout the course of the 2 series that he's in, he begins to become a leader. He begins to be more like his father, to be the role model that he wants to be. He becomes to not just want to be the Hokage, to not just want power and for people to look at him and notice him. He wants to be a leader. He wants to protect people. He cares about his village. He cares about his friends. He takes over the leadership role and becomes a man. Sure, he still has some silly stuff that he does from time to time, but he does develop, and you get to see it gradually. And sure, it's hundreds of episodes, but there are shows that do it much better with far fewer episodes. I'm just using that as kind of a baseline. But what does Tatsumi do? He joins the night raid seemingly because he was kidnapped, and then he gets a suit and fights. We saw him fight at the very beginning of the series. He fought a danger beast. He fought a big old beast to try and help people, and we knew that's what he did. We knew that he was a good fighter and that he fought to help people. Where's the change in him? What has he developed into? Nothing really. I mean, he's gotten more used to death, but aside from that, he's kind of the same guy. If I'm being completely honest, there's only one character whose death I actually cared about. Bulls. You remember Bulls, right? When I talked about Bulls in the character description when I was talking about the Empire, I was like, oh yeah, Bulls. No, you don't remember Bulls because I didn't talk about him because he's not a main character. You see, throughout the series, Esdeath is gathering people to take on the Night Raid with their own little anti-Night Raid group, and Bulls is one of these people. He's a big dude with a flamethrower and a mask, and he's pretty generic outside of that, except for when he dies. When we meet Bulls up until he dies, we know one thing about him. We know that he has a family, and we know that he cares about that family. So when we see him die, he has a flashback to his family, and you start to give a shit about him because he has something that he loves. He has something that he cares about. He has a motivation in his life. He has something that he strives for. He wants to protect his family. He wants to be there for his family. So when he dies, you genuinely feel that loss. When the character that I care most about dying is Bulls, a character who is not a main character and really doesn't matter to the overall plot, that means one thing, that death has no weight in this series. You see, because people fear death, we fear ourselves dying, we fear our loved ones dying. So the second something like that is shown to us, the second our mortality is shown to us, we become afraid and we become emotional and we become saddened and sometimes even angry. And that is something that is very useful for a storyteller when done right. When you make them connect, when you make your audience connect to a character, when done right, death is incredibly powerful. It's one of the most powerful things that can be shown in any medium. But when it's done wrong, it's cheap. Every time that the audience stand-in Tatsumi, the guy we're supposed to relate to, the guy we're supposed to be learning with, every time something happens to him, where he's supposed to emotionally feel something, where there's supposed to be some depth, he's supposed to mourn somebody, something big and impactful emotionally is supposed to happen to him, they take it away immediately. They undercut it with a joke. He falls into somebody's boobs or something wacky happens because they're afraid of emotion, because they don't know how to make a character mourn, because they don't know how to deal with it. Therefore, all of that emotional tone, all of that weight gets undercut immediately, swept out from under us, and we're not allowed to care because he's not allowed to care. At the end of the day, plain and simple, this show doesn't know how to deal with emotion. It doesn't know how to build characters. It kind of knows how to build a world, but what good is a world if it's not populated by anything? But again, at the end of the day, if you enjoyed it, then you enjoyed it. And nobody can take that away from you, and nobody should want to take that away from you. This is just my opinion. If you enjoyed it, then that's great. But to me, it's kind of everything that's wrong with anime. I mean, think about it. Tatsumi gets thrown into a crazy situation, he doesn't really have personality, everybody falls in love with him, he's uniquely talented for no reason whatsoever, and the characters that do die, you don't really feel anything for. It's kinda Sword Art Online. You know, I was gonna go into one of those endings where I kinda tie everything together and kinda talk about what the whole point of the review was, but I think that pretty much covers it. So,